Today's adventure begins in Saint Mary Glace, and that's probably not pronounced right, but if you look up my direction you can see there's a parachute hung on the steeple of this church, and that belonged to a guy named John Steele, and an effigy of him hangs over there by the first window just under the sloping roof. And this guy hung there for a couple hours pretending to be dead so the Germans wouldn't shoot him. Some German finally saw him, they cut him down and put him away in a POW camp. And this town has been historic ever since. And here we have Barbara preparing for the expedition. She swears she doesn't have the right clothes, but she seems pretty agreeable about the whole matter. This window is dedicated to the soldiers that came here to liberate. You can see here there's writing in English. On this window. Here's a 101st Airborne insignia and the 82nd Airborne. Town is plastered with these. And fortunately, this is the first time in Normandy I've seen the street pooped. They do a pretty good job in this part of France, it seems. Here's the Airborne Museum in Saint Mary Glace. As imposing as these tanks look and looked back then, you have to wonder what today's tanks must be up close. This is one of the glider planes used on D-Day to ferry men and equipment into Normandy. For a craft with no engines, it's pretty big, but you can look at it and tell it's made to float. This is outside the glider hall, getting ready to go in to where the C-47 is. It's an outstanding museum. And in a month or two, these roses are going to be really pretty. The purple ground cover back there is nice now. Another view of the church steeple. This is the C-47 that brought paratroopers into the area of Saint Mary Glace. just before the amphibious landing. A whole lot of equipment. Barbara's sneaking up on this couple, wanting to listen to them because she thinks this man may be one of the ones that was here. And you know Barbara's going to find out. Here we have the first view of a Normandy beach. This is the upper end of Utah Beach after we just had lunch. And it looks like it's pretty obvious that this is low tide. There's a lot of room on this beach. At low tide. But it doesn't look like it would be any kind of beach to have any good defenses. So we're gonna have to see what else we can find. This is one of the totems where you see the information about the memorial site there all through here in Normandy. Apparently some of the commanders here also were later involved in liberating Alsace and Strasbourg. This is the main monument here, and it's to General Leclerc, who was apparently important in the Free French forces. Here's along the beach the remnants of an old fortification built by the Germans. They've got some additional fortification that's swamped by sand now, and you can see the horse people are out here trotting. And I suspect this guy is harvesting clams. He's doing something along there. I'm wondering if these are oyster beds or clam beds or what, but it's a farm of some sort. I have to say that their construction was built for long term. That's for sure. As it's been 60 plus years since, and they're still standing. This looks like artillery placements where they could rotate, and then even more structures down that way and over here and further here and even further down here.
I have a feeling that the museum might close at 5. We ought to at least try to get
This is the museum at Omaha Beach with underwater obstructions up there on the hill and a landing craft surrounded by a lot of barbed wire. Another bunker of sorts here. They put up barbed wire here so people wouldn't fall in, I guess. novel idea here is to put barbed wire around things like that landing craft to keep the little house apes from climbing all over it, falling down, skinning themselves. Not exactly a luxury cruise if you're getting ready to come ashore on an enemy beach in rough water, scared and sick.
Okay, these stakes, and you can still see. Oh, they're muscle bed.
This is the Eisenhower plaque. Interesting plaques along here about ships and where they were off the coast and destinations, like here to Berlin, how far it was, and villages, other boats, where they were. A lot of monuments here to a lot of people. This one's to the tough Hombres combat team that went from Utah Beach all the way to Czechoslovakia. Bunch of different regiments and battalions. 318 days of combat. Now we are at the German war soldiers cemetery. For all the German military that died in the region. And in spite of the lawnmowers, pretty impressive place. Exhibit, there are various German cemeteries all over Romania, Tunisia, Egypt, France, Norway, Luxembourg, Bulgaria, Libya, Chattanooga, Tennessee. There's one to look up. Very interesting. Chattanooga, Tennessee. 186 graves. Each with its own little German flag. Here's Croatia, Latvia, Morocco, and Japan, Greece, Chechnya, Belgium, Denmark, Sweden. Very interesting. Here you can see the outline of the lay of the land with like 43 blocks, each with 10 rows. And there are 12,000 maple trees planted around here. And it's a peace park.
Yes.
This stone just has two unknowns. In German and in French. Here rest German soldiers. And here is the Book of Names. Stones, there'll be a named soldier and then an unknown, simply listed as a German soldier. This is a central monument in the midst of all the graves. I guess we have to remember that they all had mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters, wives, girlfriends, and sometimes children. It didn't really matter what side you were on.
I think it's unknown soldiers. And 89 who.
And underneath the statues is a common grave for known and unknown German soldiers. Looks a little unusual. There are 3 named soldiers here in one grave. And they died on different dates. This morning we're at Roche. This is where the floating harbor was built. And you've got very little showing because it's high tide. But there is some remnants. And this is a typical tourist town par excellence. Hotels, tourist joints, restaurants, souvenir shops, you name it, and we got it. All within easy reach. But it's kind of a pleasant little spot, even in spite of the weather and the fog, and it's cold. It feels good. Well, we've just seen a very interesting film in the museum detailing how this artificial harbor was conceived and built and towed across the English Channel and formed here in less than 2 weeks from D-Day. So by about 14 June, they were offloading supplies that had to be utilized. And since the Germans had all the harbors, natural harbors at least, heavily fortified, they built their own. This is quite an interesting museum, and it details the British contribution as well as the countries that one rarely hears about, like the Netherlands, Denmark, Belgium, the Free French, and not the least, the Norwegian contingents that fought. This is the place to have lunch. No question about it. This is the spot for lunch in Port Aubusson, which is a Newport wannabe, I suspect. And over there are some locks. So I don't know what happens when the tide goes out. Or is this a river, maybe? I just noticed that. Did you see these?
Oh, but
Those are locks. I really don't understand how this works. Those are obviously lock gates, but I don't see any others. And the water is higher on the other side of the gate than it is on this side, which is seaward. Now this bridge is not a drawbridge, it's a roll bridge. It rolls back on these wheels and turns, I believe. I haven't seen it open, but that's the way it has to be for these large boats to get through. Now maybe there's a gate over beyond, but I'm no engineer and I don't understand. Okay, now there's the answer to the bridge question. It rolls around and turns itself into that recess in the lock wall across the second rail. But I still don't know. Maybe there must be another gate out beyond that seawall. Here we have the real thing, just off the boat. Scallops, stone crab, lobster, oysters, conch, and just about everything. And this little kid is not sure he wants to fool around with a living lobster. I don't see any skate, do you?
270 grammes.
No.
There's squid and shark.
What is those? Shark?
I think that's a skate. That's a skate.
What? That one?
Uh-huh. I believe so.
That's one that you ate.
Yeah, those little tiny shrimp are so good. Look at him. Barbara, watch him getting those scallops out. This guy's an artist with his knife.
It's on there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Je fais ça à un homard.
Ah bah oui, bah lui.
J'ai peur de l'homard.
Bah possible.
That's something.
Attends, madame.
This is the port of Bessin. In some ways, a lot like Maine or Massachusetts up around Rockport. And lots of fishing going on. And lots of fishing boats. And a wonderful harbor here. This is the entrance to the American cemetery. Just beyond is the ocean. The place is covered up with people. It's not the tourist season, but there's a lot of people coming and going. And there's some beautiful tulips all over this place. And that's very well manicured. They're building a new visitor center, which is why all the construction equipment and detours. This is the interior of the cemetery. The trees are beautifully sculpted. There's this long hallway down to the far building, and at its head we have this large semicircular memorial with some beautiful crocus, I believe, hyacinths, and on each of the two opposing walls are diagrams of the military operations of World War II. Along this huge semicircular wall are the many names inscribed. And just beyond those trees is the North Sea. A big change since we were at Roche this morning because the tide's going out. But the cemetery comes right up to the beach approaches. Lots and lots of white crosses and an occasional Star of David. Each cross has got the person's name, rank, state of origin, and his outfit. And on the Jewish, it's engraved just on the arms of the star. Well, it looks like somebody's visited and put a flag here and there, and sometimes a flower or two. This is the memorial standing at the main part of Omaha Beach, where the D-Day landings took place along here. And there's a really modernistic piece of sculpture out here. Now, I'll have to do a little research to explain the significance of this, other than to say it's of the modern school. It's about 4:30 in the afternoon, and at this point the tide is out, but you can tell from the shoreline here along this seawall the tide comes at this time of year, at least, right up to the masonry. And this plaque explains the sculpture. It's entitled "The Brave." And the sculptress is a lady named Anilor Bannon. She has a website. Well, the beach is a playground today. It hasn't always been that way. This morning we're at a little fishing port called Grand Camp de Massy, and it looks like it's just beginning to come alive with tourism. You can see a waterfront apartments and some sailboats, but big time fishing, it looks like to me. That must be the main industry, besides the little seafood restaurants that are all around, and the community fish market with the day's catch and the name of the boat that did the catching. This is Seafood City. And we went to the tourist office to find out about our next stop. And it's run by a beautiful little French lady who spoke very good English. But I found the tourist office by going into a restaurant where nobody spoke English, but we communicate, and I must look pretty pitiful with my pigeon French. A gun emplacement in a German bunker that's out in the farmland and was recently uncovered. It's just been opened. This is in memory of the Rangers who landed here and spent 5 hours, it says, on the 9th of June 1944. This was the Mizey Battery, and it's just outside the town of Mizey. There's all kinds of trenches here that have been reopened.
I wonder where he got all these pictures. I'm gonna ask.
This is one of the concrete bunkers. They did build them to last. And I think we can go in this one. The roof of this building is 9 feet thick, reinforced concrete to prevent bombing. And it would have housed 20 men.
This is very interesting.
Machine gun placement here for defense, and then down the stairs to the outside where the personnel could go in a bunker. All these trenches have been re-excavated along the original lines. And apparently this place was originally found by looking at old aerial maps. Here's another big gun emplacement that looks like it would hold a big gun.
I don't know what these things are around it. Well, this is number 4.
Well, what does number 4 say?
Gun pit for 155 howitzer.
Howitzer. The lady at the ticket office tells us that some of the local people can remember being used by the Germans to build this place. And here we have a underground bunker beginning along with this trench. This ammunition bunker stayed in service from the 6th of June invasion throughout until the 9th, with 180 tons of ammunition found in the area. One of these rooms was for the explosive munitions, and then a smaller room here is where the fuses were stored. Good idea to keep the fuses away from the explosives until you're ready to use them. This is another shell storage room. This place sat empty and neglected and covered over by farmland from the time the Germans left until the recent excavations were done. Here's the German signature being built in 1943. For some reason they built these things with wood in between. I don't know if that was leftover forms for the concrete or what, but it's obvious in this room. There was once a sign here, but you can't tell what it says. Well, the map says this is the commander's daily office. I wonder if that means the officer of the day. But he didn't have a lot of protection from bombing. I guess that's what you get paid for. An underground field hospital that was evidently destroyed at the time of the battle. Not too much left here. Hope nobody was sick that day.
There's an old pail down there.
This is another gun pit for a 155 millimeter howitzer. And I guess these were ammunition storage rooms and shelters, because that stuff's too heavy to carry around. This is another underground storage facility with big time reinforced ceilings, and a way in and a way out. This is modern day archaeology. Another big howitzer pit here for a 155 millimeter gun, and each one has its own ammunition storage areas. I guess they got resupplied as best they could. This is part of the gun base. You can still see the wheels where it turned. I've been looking to make a picture of this stuff because it is all over, and it's mistletoe, and it's mistletoe on steroids. And you'll pass a clump of trees just like this, and they will have mistletoe beyond belief. Monster mistletoe. And it looks like it has to be years old. Everybody evidently doesn't get mistletoe for Christmas. This is a huge crop. Well, since it's no longer foggy and the tide is out, we came back to our Romanche to see what we couldn't see the other day. This is part of the artificial harbor. That's one of the roadways that were called Phoenix, I believe. And further out, you can see some of the caissons that were brought in after being towed from England and filled with water to form this artificial harbor. And there's another piece of roadway, and you can see where the moorings are on it. And even around here, you've got more of the same thing. along with some parasailers. And those cliffs are the beginning of the way toward a place called Port du Haut, where the Rangers came up. It's interesting to realize that each one of those things displaced 6,000 tons of water. It's like a big ship. Yeah, this is one of 2 artificial harbors that were the brainchild of Winston Churchill. And it worked, even though the one at Omaha Beach was destroyed by the storm. One wonders if these, I don't see any evidence that they have any lights on them. They could be considered real hazard to navigation. Well, it's an imposing looking structure. It's also an imposing looking walk around here. This marshy bay with 16 jillion people all over, including a few tourist buses. We never did figure out the privilege of parking though. Don't know how that works. Well, we got here at high tide, and as you can see, the parking area here at low tide is quite extensive. But if you don't get your car out and the tide comes in, it's under a couple feet of water. This is an unusual parking lot. Guess you had to buy flood insurance. Well, it's a striking picture out here. Just this little causeway leading to it. And then evidently when the tide goes out, this is all dry. Well, this place is a definite castle. Well, I hate to have to get up there in a hurry. This is the inside of the church at San Michel, which is not really big or all that fancy, but there are a lot of candles lit here. All kinds of candles. 1 euro, 2 euro, plain, colored, just about anything. Well, you can get an idea of where we parked the car. Way at the end of this road. And there are plenty of people coming. The cars in the foreground all belong to people either staying in the hotel here or who work here. And when the tide's up, you can't park anywhere else. Well, we finally made it to the top, which is a nice exercise in stair climbing. And we're out here on a terrace with about 500 of our closest friends. Lots of Japanese tourists and school kids. And this is the bay. It looks like the tide's going out now. It's interesting, they have street washers that go down into those flooded parking lots. Interesting shadow on the water from the steeple. And this is a steep rock. Easy to see how it could be well defended. When we arrived about 3 hours ago, all this was underwater from the high tide. Now the tide's out, and it'll stay out until this evening, but there's signs all around telling you to get your car out before high tide. Otherwise, I guess you'd be a little damp. This is the harbor at Granville, where we had lunch, and this is the harbor at low tide. So if you're gonna take a sail in your boat, you better get out of Dodge here before the tide goes out, or you're just flat stuck in the mud. But it's nice because you can look around and see who's got a clean bottom and who hadn't. Like this guy right here, he needs to pay some attention to his boat. And that red one over there looks like $1 million. So it's quite a differential in the tide here. Now you can see the Restaurant du Port, where I had the best oysters on the shell that I've had in a long, long time, and a nice dish of paella. Good lunch.